Two. Manicord is the other publisher. I have been most fortunate to have acquired over the years in my work as publisher many immensely talented friends I now seriously consider my estate. This job of over 30 years making great and new ideas and many fresh ways of looking at old things possible and available in print, in books for many more people to be able to read has brought me in stimulating conversation with the finest minds of our country. Sometimes the honor was more than the pleasure. But with Ben, it was always both honor and pleasure. Here was a world-renowned intellectual whose tremendous and vigorous contributions to world scholarship and socio-political practice, sitting with us at lunches and dinners, eating a bit messily and without a care. You know, sometimes noodles are hanging all over the place, but we didn't mind, and we didn't mind, asking us all sorts of off-field questions that always made us pause, search one another's faces for clues, and always those took us longer to answer. Not hard questions, actually, just of Filipino ordinary life. Our food, words and expressions, gestures and habits, things in the market, things in movies, things in books. Not hard questions, just that we never saw them as odd until he asked. And there was always so much good-natured banter and laughter. Over the years, there were many such get-togethers in various restos we wanted him to try, in Ambet's Ritz Towers condo with different groups, young and old and new. We never felt like students being grilled or subjects in a field research. He always encouraged me in my work and told me how important books are in imagining our nation. The first time he went to Anvil to submit for publication, Carlos Bolosan's All the Conspirators, a novel very different from America is in the Heart, actually the opposite end of the pendulum swing, because it was like a pot boiler. It was meant for Hollywood, as Carlos Bolosan also needed to earn money. That he and Carol Howe recovered and annotated. He sat patiently with his friend Henry Navoa and waited in our reception area. He could have just said a word through Ambeth or Joel Rocamora, who in 1998 were already Anvil authors, but no, he waited until the guard mentioned his name and I was demanding why no one told me right away. I knew of him, his 1983 Imagine Communities and his work on Rizal, which called the attention of global academics to Rizal as an intellectual and his novels as world-class fiction. In 2003, on Ben's initiative, Verso allowed us to do a Philippine edition of Imagine Communities, 20 years after the very first came out. At its launch in Ateneo, he appreciated Mike Corosa's Kundiman renditions. In 2006, when we launched under Three Flags, a year after Verso released it, his friend Henry's teenage boys danced at the National Museum launch. They danced hip-hop. In 2013, I think it was 2013, he, Carlos, and Bowman started to work on the Diablo sa Filipinas because he considered Isabelo de los Reyes another world-class Filipino intellectual and wanted to do this translation. And that was where I really saw how he worked on a book, because the first two books, Imagine and Under Three Flags, were just reprints, Philippine edition. So we would just be given by Verso, print-ready e-file, and we would just do our own cover. We always made our own covers. But with this, it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of validating, a lot of asking me to ask Bowman or Carlos this and that. He was delighted like a kid when he finally met Paul Medina Jr. I arranged it, I think sometime in 2011 with Trace Chavez at the time, as he was a fan and collected his yearly releases of the comic books. He brought all his copies for Paul to sign. We traveled to Baguio, Banaue, and Sagada together for 2 weeks with Angel Shaw and Ami Mishano and Henry's two sons. In the last 2 years, he wanted to bring Henry to see his house in Ithaca, show him Cornell and his plays. We helped and tried to work on his visa, even asking Joel to write The Ambassador, but he was denied. I think that by the time we released and launched ang Diablo sa Pilipinas, almost exactly last year, here in Asian Center, he had accepted the fact that Henry would not get to see Ithaca. In 2013, he built Henry's family a house in Gapan with a fantastic view of Mount Arayat, which according to Henry, every morning in the last 10 days, just this November, that he stayed there with them, he would wake up, stretch his arms, and call it my mountain. He also set a new chapter for Imagine Communities, Chapter 12, Travel and Traffic, which will be added to the reprint in the first quarter of next year. The last time I saw Ben was in the last week of April this year. He said his mind was not as it used to be. He sent me a draft of a short autobio that same month, but, well, I didn't pay attention to it yet because it was littered with margin notes of things to validate or check with Perry, with Yoshi, and many other people, because that's when he said his mind was not as it used to be, because the way he remembered things was not the same way that Perry remembered or somebody else remembered. I missed his wake and funeral, but I know it was more important to send Henry. Ben has graced my life like no other. Ben has graced all our lives like no other. And Ben has privileged the life of our nation like no other.